The ancient African gods were believed to possess the power to control the very elements of nature: thunder, lightning, and storms. These deities didn't just influence the weather, they shaped the fate of entire communities, determined the success of crops, and even played a pivotal role in battles. From Shango, the god of thunder, to Oya, the goddess of winds, African spiritual traditions are rich with powerful gods whose command over nature had a profound impact on daily life, rituals, and survival. In African cosmology, the weather gods are not just figures of mythology. They are powerful beings who maintain the balance of the natural world. Their influence extends far beyond mere climate control. These gods govern the very forces of nature that shape human existence. They are honored in elaborate rituals, revered as protectors of the people, and feared for their wrath. The weather, after all, is both life-giving and destructive. In Africa, the gods who control it are seen as the keepers of this delicate balance, ensuring the prosperity of crops, the safety of communities, and the continuation of life. Deities like Shango, Oya, and Amadioha embody the forces of nature in their most raw and powerful forms. Shango, the Yoruba god of thunder and lightning, is often called upon in times of need for strength, protection, and justice. Oya, the goddess of winds and storms, embodies the transformative power of nature, capable of both destruction and creation. Amadioha, in the Igbo tradition, is the god of lightning, whose strikes are seen as the divine judgment upon the earth. These deities were not only feared for their immense power, but were worshipped and honored in sacred ceremonies. But their influence didn't stop at the African continent. These weather gods carried their power across the ocean, finding new homes in the African diaspora. In the Caribbean, the Americas, and Brazil, their worship and respect were maintained, even as Western powers sought to suppress and demonize African religious practices. Despite attempts to erase them, these gods of thunder, lightning, and wind continue to thrive in modern rituals and cultural practices. In this video, we will dive deep into the world of African weather gods, exploring their divine powers, the rituals that honored them, and the profound impact they had on the lives of African peoples. We'll discover how their influence shaped the climate, their role in rituals, and how these deities were feared and revered by both their worshippers and Western powers. Join us as we uncover the stories of the ancient African gods who controlled the weather and see how their legacy continues to influence the world today. Shango, the god of thunder. Shango is one of the most powerful and revered deities in Yoruba cosmology, widely known as the god of thunder, lightning, fire, and masculinity. Shango is not just a god of the weather, he is a warrior king whose dominion over thunder and lightning is a reflection of his immense power and authority. In Yoruba tradition, Shango's influence extends to many aspects of life, from justice and leadership to the very forces of nature that govern the earth. Shango's power over thunder and lightning is central to his identity. It is said that Shango wields a double-headed axe, which he uses to summon the thunder and strike lightning down from the heavens. This axe symbolizes his strength, control over the elements, and his ability to enforce justice. In Yoruba cosmology, thunder and lightning are seen as manifestations of Shango's presence as divine judgment descending upon the world. When thunder rumbles in the sky, it is believed that Shango is speaking, delivering his commands or warnings. Shango is also associated with fire, which symbolizes both destruction and purification. His control over fire extends to his role in transforming society. He is the god of kingship, governance, and social order. As the king of the Yoruba pantheon, Shango's powers were believed to ensure both the prosperity of the land and the protection of his people. His storms, though powerful, were a sign of his favor and his ability to restore balance. The Yoruba people would often invoke Shango's powers during difficult times, seeking his strength and protection during storms or periods of unrest. Shango's worship involved grand rituals that invoked the power of thunder and lightning. These rituals often included drumming, dancing, and singing, as the Yoruba believed that music was a way to communicate with the gods. The rhythmic beats of the drum mimicked the rumbling of thunder, and the dancers' movements mirrored the energy of lightning. In these ceremonies, worshippers would call upon Shango to protect their communities, ensure bountiful harvests, and maintain justice. The presence of Shango was seen as both awe-inspiring and terrifying as power could protect, but it could also destroy those who were unjust or disobedient. Shango's influence did not end with the Yoruba people. His worship spread across the African diaspora, particularly in Cuba, Brazil, and the Caribbean. In these places, Shango's legacy lives on through religions like Candomblé, Santeria, and Vodou. In these practices, Shango is still invoked as a protector and a symbol of strength, justice, and power. His association with thunder and lightning remains a central part of his identity, and his worship continues to play a significant role in the spiritual lives of millions. Shango's connection to thunder and lightning is not just about weather control. It symbolizes the raw, untamed power of nature itself. He represents the forces that shape the world, forces that are both destructive and creative, terrifying yet necessary. Through Shango, the Yoruba people understood that the weather, like the world itself, is governed by powerful and sometimes unpredictable forces. Shango teaches that these forces must be respected and honored, for they hold the power to bring both creation and destruction. Oya, the goddess of winds and storms. Oya, one of the most powerful and revered deities in Yoruba cosmology, is the goddess of winds, storms, and transformation. Oya's dominion over the forces of nature is as formidable as it is vital. She is the guardian of the Niger River, the deity who controls the winds, storms, and the energy of the atmosphere itself. Known for her fierce and unpredictable nature, Oya represents the dynamic and transformative aspects of life, both destruction and creation. Oya's powers over the winds and storms are legendary. She is often depicted as a force of nature capable of causing hurricanes, tornadoes, and violent weather. Her storms are not random, they are a reflection of her divine will. Oya's winds can sweep through the land, removing the old and making space for new growth, just as a storm can clear the skies after a tumultuous time. Oya embodies the power of change. She is not a deity of stagnation, but one who symbolizes the constant flux of the universe. In Yoruba spirituality, Oya is the goddess of transformation. Her storms and winds are seen as cleansing forces, sweeping away what is no longer needed and making way for new life. As the guardian of the Niger River, Oya also represents fertility and the life-giving force of water. Rivers, like the winds, can shape the landscape, bring nourishment to the land, and transform the environment. Similarly, Oya's role as a goddess of storms represents the renewal and rebirth that comes after destruction. Oya is also a goddess of life and death, embodying both the destructive and creative forces of the universe. Her storms are a metaphor for the cyclical nature of existence, the way in which destruction can lead to renewal and death can make way for life. In many ways, Oya's power is both feared and respected. Her ability to summon fierce winds and storms makes her a formidable force, but she is also revered as a protector and guide. Those who worship Oya seek her favor not just for protection during times of crisis, but also for guidance through the storms of life. Rituals and ceremonies in honor of Oya are often intense and powerful. These rituals typically involve drumming, dancing, and offerings, with the worshippers invoking Oya's presence through rhythmic movements and the sound of the drum, which mimics the roar of the wind. The worship of Oya is deeply tied to the understanding that change while often difficult and tumultuous, is a necessary part of life's journey. Her storms may bring destruction, but they also create the conditions for new growth, opportunities, and transformations. Oya's worship also spread to the African diaspora, particularly in the Americas, where she is revered in religious practices such as Santeria, Candomblé, and Vodou. In these spiritual practices, Oya is still seen as a powerful figure of change and transformation. She remains a goddess who governs the winds and storms, but she also embodies the energy of the people, resilient, powerful, and unyielding in the face of adversity. Oya continues to be a source of empowerment, especially for those seeking to overcome challenges and bring about change in their lives. Oya teaches us that the storms of life, though frightening, are a necessary force for transformation. Her power over the winds and storms reminds us that growth often comes through adversity and that destruction can be a precursor to creation. In honoring Oya, we acknowledge the importance of embracing change and welcoming the forces of nature, no matter how powerful or overwhelming they may seem. Amadioha, the god of lightning. Amadioha, the god of lightning in the Igbo tradition, is another formidable figure in African cosmology who controls the power of the skies. Known for his fierce nature and divine authority, Amadioha represents not only the destructive power of lightning, but also the energy of divine judgment. In the Igbo belief system, lightning is considered a direct manifestation of Amadioha's will, striking down those who are unjust and serving as a reminder of the god's ability to restore order through powerful acts of nature. Amadioha's control over lightning is seen as both a blessing and a warning. Lightning is often considered an agent of divine judgment when it strikes. It is believed to be a response to wrongdoing, a divine intervention to restore balance. Amadioha's power is thus feared and respected. His lightning strikes can bring devastation, but they also hold the promise of justice. For the Igbo people, lightning is a sign that the gods are present and watching, capable of bringing order to chaos when necessary. Amadioha's role in the Igbo society is not only one of judgment, but also protection. He is seen as a guardian deity who defends the righteous and ensures that the forces of nature align with moral law. His lightning strikes are not indiscriminate, but are aimed at those who threaten the social or spiritual order. In this way, Amadioha embodies both the forces of creation and destruction, as he helps to maintain balance in the world. His divine power ensures that justice is meted out, whether it's through a lightning bolt that strikes down the wicked or through the protection of the innocent. In Igbo rituals, Amadioha is honored through ceremonies that seek to gain his favor and avoid his wrath. These rituals often include sacrifices, prayers, and offerings, as the Igbo people believe that by appeasing Amadioha, they can avoid his judgment and ensure their safety. The rituals also acknowledge the importance of maintaining balance and justice in the community. As a god who controls the weather, Amadioha's influence is seen as essential to the harmony of the natural world, as well as the social and spiritual realms. The reverence for Amadioha extends beyond the Igbo people. In the African diaspora, particularly in Haiti, Trinidad, and parts of Brazil, Amadioha's influence can be seen in the worship of similar deities associated with lightning and thunder. These deities are often invoked for protection and guidance, as their power over the skies is believed to influence not just the weather, but the very forces of life and death. In these spiritual traditions, the legacy of Amadioha continues, with his lightning strikes symbolizing divine intervention, justice, and the power of nature. Amadioha's role as the god of lightning reminds us that nature's forces are not simply chaotic, they are governed by divine will. Lightning, in particular, serves as a symbol of the power of transformation, cleansing, and renewal. Just as Amadioha uses lightning to restore order, so too can we understand that the disruptive forces of nature are often necessary for the restoration of balance in our lives. Through the worship of Amadioha, the Igbo people, and those in the diaspora, acknowledge the importance of respecting the forces of nature and the justice they bring. Other weather gods in African traditions, the power of weather gods is not confined to just a few figures like Shango, Oya, and Amadioha. Across Africa, many cultures feature deities that govern the weather, the elements, and the natural forces that shape the environment. These gods are essential to understanding African spirituality, as they are seen as direct influencers of the climate, agriculture, and survival. The relationship between these gods and their communities is one of deep reverence and respect, as weather directly impacts daily life, crop yields, and community well-being. In many African belief systems, the forces of nature, rain, wind, thunder, and lightning are considered sacred and are ruled by specific deities. For example, in some parts of Africa, rain gods are highly revered because rain is essential for the survival of crops and livestock. The god of rain in these cultures is often seen as a life giver, without whom the community would not survive. The god of rain is invoked in rituals for good harvests, especially during times of drought, when communities face hardship and struggle to grow food. One such example comes from the traditions of the Bantu people, particularly in Central Africa, where rain gods like Chukwu, also known as Oluwa, are believed to control the rains and the fertility of the land. Chukwu, who is often viewed as the supreme god, has the power to bring rain and fertility, ensuring that crops flourish and the community thrives. This belief underscores the importance of weather gods in agricultural societies, where the forces of nature determine not just survival, but prosperity. The Togolese people have a weather god known as Agbe, who is associated with the winds and the seas. Agbe controls the cycles of weather that affect fishing and agriculture, both crucial to the lives of coastal and riverine communities. Agbe's power is believed to bring favorable weather for both fishing and farming, making him a highly respected deity. Similarly, in the Akan tradition of West Africa, the god Nyame is believed to have control over the weather and the stars. Nyam, associated with the sun and rain, is responsible for maintaining balance and order in nature, ensuring that the rhythms of the earth stay intact. In West Africa, the god Tlaloc, who was originally part of the Aztec pantheon, is a powerful figure in certain communities. While Tlaloc is not traditionally African, his likeness and powers have been adopted by African spiritual communities, symbolizing the vital importance of water and rain for the survival of crops and people. The power of water as a life-giving force is a universal theme in African weather deities, where water and rain symbolize both life and rebirth. Across these various African cultures, the common thread remains. Weather gods are essential figures who control the forces of nature and, by extension, control the fate of the people. They are deeply intertwined with agriculture, fertility, and prosperity. These gods ensure that the rains fall, the winds blow, and the lightning strikes when necessary, shaping the agricultural cycles and the survival of communities. In addition to their role in agriculture and survival, weather gods in African traditions also serve as protectors. They guard against the destructive forces of nature, such as droughts, floods, or violent storms. Communities pray to these deities for protection during harsh weather events and ask for their favor during times of abundance. Weather gods are thus central to the balance of life in African spiritual systems, embodying the necessary forces that maintain harmony in both the natural and human worlds. Rituals and worship honoring the weather gods. Weather gods have been honored and revered in a variety of rituals and ceremonies throughout Africa. These deities are directly connected to the livelihood of the people, and their power to influence nature makes them central figures in the spiritual practices of many African cultures. The rituals dedicated to these gods are elaborate and designed to invoke their favor, to maintain harmony with nature, and to ensure that the forces of weather work in favor of the community. Rituals to honor the weather gods often involve prayers, sacrifices, and offerings. These offerings vary from culture to culture, but common rituals include sacrifices of animals, such as goats, chickens, or cows, which are believed to appease the gods and secure their blessings. These offerings are made in sacred spaces, such as shrines or sacred groves, where the community comes together to perform ceremonies to invoke the powers of the gods. These spaces are often considered to be imbued with divine energy, where the connection between the human and the divine is strongest. The role of music and dance in these rituals cannot be overstated. Drumming is a central part of ceremonies dedicated to weather gods like Shango and Oya. The rhythmic beats of the drums are thought to replicate the rumbling of thunder or the howling winds, symbolizing the arrival of the divine power of the weather gods. In Yoruba tradition, drummers and dancers move in synchrony with the beats, calling upon the presence of the gods, especially Shango, who is associated with thunder and lightning. The dance, often wild and energetic, mirrors the intensity of storms, with performers expressing the power of the gods through their movements. In addition to drumming and dancing, other forms of music such as chanting, singing, and the blowing of horns are used to summon the weather gods. These rituals create a connection between the community and the divine, ensuring that the weather gods are present and willing to offer their blessings. The music in particular is seen as a form of divine communication, an offering that can bridge the gap between the human world and the supernatural realm. The rituals also often include prayers, where the community requests specific favors from the gods. For example, in times of drought, prayers to rain gods like Chukwu or Tlaloc are offered, asking for the return of rain to nourish the land. Conversely, during times of heavy rainfall or destructive storms, prayers may be directed at gods like Oya, seeking protection from the storm's wrath. These prayers are seen as vital to ensuring that the balance of nature remains intact, as the weather gods are believed to control the very forces that affect agricultural productivity, food security, and the overall well-being of the community. The weather gods also have dedicated festivals in many African traditions. These festivals are often marked by grand feasts, music, and dancing, where communities come together to celebrate the bounty provided by the gods and to offer thanks for favorable weather. These festivals also serve as an important time for the community to come together in unity, reinforcing their relationship with the gods and ensuring that the divine favor continues. In Yoruba tradition, the festival of Shango, called the Shango Festival, is one of the most important annual events. It features processions, sacrifices, dancing, and music in honor of the thunder god, with participants seeking his protection and blessings for the coming year. The fear and reverence of weather gods during Western rule. During the Western period, African spiritual practices, including the worship of weather gods, faced significant persecution and misunderstanding. European rulers, who were often driven by their own religious ideologies, viewed African religions as pagan or devilish. The powerful weather deities such as Shango, Oya, and Amadioha were particularly feared by Western rulers, not just for their control over the natural elements, but for the deep respect and fear they commanded in African communities. The influence of these weather gods, especially their ability to control lightning, storms, and thunder, was seen by the Western rulers as a threat to their authority. These gods were not just revered, they were believed to have the power to alter the natural world, strike down enemies, and bring about divine retribution. This made them formidable figures in the eyes of European settlers and missionaries who sought to suppress indigenous belief systems. The Western rulers feared the power of these gods, as they knew that the people's allegiance to these deities often transcended Western authority and Christian teachings. The rituals that honored these weather gods, such as the animal sacrifices, drumming, and ecstatic dances, were also seen as subversive acts. Western rulers were particularly hostile to the practices that invoked divine power in the form of thunderstorms, lightning, and violent winds. The sound of drums, which mimicked the thunder of the gods, was thought to summon the very forces that could challenge Western control. The drumming was both a spiritual practice and a form of resistance. These rituals were seen as an embodiment of African identity, culture, and autonomy, making them targets for Western suppression. In response to Western pressures, African communities often practiced their rituals in secrecy, continuing to honor their weather gods despite the risks. These deities remained a source of strength and defiance against Western forces. For example, in areas where Shango was worshipped, particularly in West Africa, a symbol, the double-headed axe, became a symbol of rebellion and resistance. The continued reverence for weather gods like Shango and Oya served as a form of cultural preservation, a way for Africans to hold on to their spiritual beliefs despite the efforts to erase them. Even in the African diaspora, the worship of these weather gods continued in secret and later evolved into new spiritual practices such as Vodo, Santeria, and Candomblé. In these traditions, the legacy of Shango, Oya, and other weather deities lives on. In the Caribbean, the Americas, and Brazil, these deities were syncretized with Catholic saints, but their powers over nature remained central to their worship. For instance, Shango was often associated with Saint Barbara, whose feast day coincided with the traditional celebrations of Shango in the Yoruba religion. The continuation of these practices demonstrated the resilience of African spiritual traditions, even in the face of Western oppression. Western rulers' attempts to demonize weather gods only strengthened their symbolic importance. These gods were seen as symbols of African strength, resistance, and unity. In many ways, they became even more significant during the Western period, as they represented the enduring connection to ancestral knowledge, power, and identity. The gods who controlled the weather were not just elemental forces. They were forces of cultural survival, embodying the strength of African people in the face of adversity. Conclusion: the ancient African gods who controlled the weather Shango, Oya, Amadioha, and their counterparts are not only powerful deities of nature, but also symbols of balance, resilience, and divine authority. These gods played a central role in African cosmologies, directly influencing the climate, agriculture, and daily life of their communities. From the thunderous power of Shango to the winds and transformative storms of Oya, these deities governed the forces of nature that shaped the land and its people. Through the worship of these weather gods, African communities recognized the power of nature, understanding that the forces of the earth could be both destructive and life-giving. The storms summoned by Shango and Oya were seen as cleansing forces, bringing both renewal and destruction forces that were revered, respected, and feared. These gods were central figures in rituals that invoked their power to ensure favorable weather, healthy crops, and protection from harm. Through drumming, dancing, and sacred offerings, the people of Africa maintained a profound connection to the weather gods, seeking their guidance and blessings in the face of life's challenges. The legacy of these deities did not end with Western rule. Despite efforts to erase African spiritual traditions, the worship of weather gods continued in secret and later evolved in the African diaspora. In places like the Caribbean, Brazil, and the Americas, the worship of deities such as Shango, Oya, and other weather gods was carried forward in new spiritual practices like Vodou, Santeria, and Candomblé. Through the process of syncretism, these gods adapted to new contexts, but maintained their divine control over nature. Their presence in the diaspora reflects the resilience of African traditions as they served as powerful symbols of resistance and cultural survival. Today, the worship of these gods continues in various forms, with their power over weather and nature still honored in ceremonies and rituals around the world. The weather gods are a reminder of the deep connection between humans and the natural world, the understanding that life, death, and growth are intertwined with the elements. Their stories and rituals offer us valuable lessons about the forces that shape our world, both physically and spiritually, and about the importance of balance in all aspects of life. The ancient African gods who controlled the weather remind us that the power of nature is not something to be feared, but something to be respected and honored. These gods, with their ability to influence thunder, lightning, storms, and winds, are not just forces of destruction, they are essential to the cycles of creation, fertility, and transformation. As we continue to learn more about these deities, we can better understand how African spiritual traditions have shaped the way people interact with the world around them, finding harmony and strength in the forces of nature. If you found this exploration of African weather gods insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There's so much more to uncover about the ancient gods and the spiritual wisdom of African cultures. Stay tuned for more content that delves into the myths, deities, and traditions that have shaped the African worldview.